Good day and welcome to Tough Talk. My name is Steve Badia, and today I have Mina,
Hi, how are you?
Mamusu,
What's
and
good?
our girl Didi.
Hi everyone.
So our topic today is do we associate Western accent with intelligence? In that we mean Africans who hold Western accent, do we associate that with being intelligent? Do we see those Africans as being intelligent compared to Africans who don't have Western accent? Okay, so let me start with Mina.
I think, in a sense, we do, not just as ourselves, society as well. That's how society works. The more educated you sound, the more uplifted you are in whatever you do. If you sound like you know what you're talking about, then people assume you're a very intelligent person, you're smart, you've done this, you have this many degrees, all that stuff. But that's not necessarily true because there's some people who can sound basically white and don't have any diplomas or anything like that. But I think it's definitely associated with intelligence if you have a more proper way of speaking.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because the more white you sound, the more educated you are to, let's say, when you go back home. When I went back home, when I speak my Creole, it's with a different accent than those who were grown up in Sierra Leone. So that then associates, oh, she's gone to school, she's done. And I was just 15 at the time. So people, and I looked older than I was at the time as well due to puberty. But people then associated the fact that I had an accent or a white accent, I spoke correct English to a certain degree, that I was more smarter.
Hmm. I think it varies in the context. Like obviously, when you're back home, there is that notion that if you speak a certain way, then it is of a whiter nature. But I think if you're living in Western society, it could just be someone might just think you're just more educated than they are. So I don't think it's always like related to race and like how you sound. So yeah, depends on the context.
Can I just give you guys a scenario here? We've got a lot of families who have had children here, and we've got a lot in my community personally who have raised their kids to only speak English and to only sound a certain way because apparently that is best for them than them speaking their native language or sounding African. So then it comes like all of that plays into people's mentality and people's views on what is smart, what is better than what isn't. And a lot of times our cultures have been put to the side as being bad, or our accents have been put to the side as being bad, and that's how people are raising their children in a manner that allows them to be one way and forget about another way.
In a sense, I feel like that's done to sort of prepare and protect the kids over here because if you speak like the people over here, you're more likely to be accepted within society. And if you sound like them, you're more likely to be taken on for a job. It's not a good thing and it's not justified, but that's just how it is. And it's sad, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah, no, that's true because I think I agree with that point in terms of do we associate Western accent with intelligence. I'm not sure if I have associated Western accent with intelligence, but I have felt it was better compared to African accent, which was ignorant of me at the time because and to me, is this really about like the accent or do we associate part of Western character or characteristics we cherish? I think it comes down to the history. If you look at our history, there are um, many things about Africa has either been influenced by the West. Even our educated people, almost our leaders, have had some Western connections. Either they have come to the West to learn, or they have done certain things. Most of their attributes are derived derived from the West. So that in itself, historically, we tend to shape, whether it's the media, movies we watch, we tend to shape how we see what is Western. And in as much as certain Africans who choose to speak English or African countries who adopt English as their main language should be good at it because they have chosen to do it. But naturally, I know Africans as people will never be good at English compared to white people or better. So then there is no need to hold people to a standard they cannot achieve. So that's why these days are holding on really be critical of Africans English. I will be critical of the content or the message they are sending across.
Yes, exactly. I think that's a very important point, because let's put aside somebody's accent and focus on the content of what they're saying. If they're speaking sense, then the accent should not matter regardless. Unless, of course, now they're speaking a language that you do not understand. But if it's in English and they're speaking proper English, it's just the accent that's the problem. Then you have to check yourself and make sure you are in the right mind, that you're not judging somebody's context based on the person's accent.
I think that argument, I really don't agree with it at all. I think you're just making people lazy by giving them this excuse that because it's not your language per se, because it was something that was brought into your country through colonization, you don't need to worry so much about being able to speak it properly. If you put out those messages, people are going to become lazy. Like, even if you think from a very primary level at school, like we talked about this, you know, if you say, don't worry, you're African, like as long as I'm from Zambia, as long as your Bemba is good, don't worry about the English part of things. When that child grows up, how are they going to be able to construct sentences? How are they going to be able to write a CV? How are they going to be able to assert themselves in a workplace? Because you can't retract the fact that they're living in a Western society where that language is dominant. And if you expect those people to succeed, you need to give them those tools. Language happens to be one of those tools. And to say that, and I think it's like sometimes this thing of always attaching race to why we do things is almost like a hindrance, because if you're going to say that it takes away from your Africanness to kind of uphold that language, then what benefit does it have for you if you don't use that language when it can serve you best, which is maybe in your career? And another point, I think that people who kind of correct you have to kind of look at where they're actually coming from, because sometimes, like, if you were to tell me and be like, oh, D, that sentence, like, that doesn't actually make sense, then I'll be like, okay, that's fine, because I'm learning, you know what I mean? And if I was trying to convey a message and how I've written it doesn't make sense for anyone to understand, then you can't go back and say it's just about the message, because you wouldn't even get the message.
I agree with that, and I think they should both work hand in hand. Like you said, when it comes to language and race, it's a very big issue, because some people feel like if they speak too much like a westernized person, they detach from where they're from. And that's not necessarily true. You can still hold on to your culture and still speak properly. But in a sense, it's not saying that if you don't speak properly, we're looking down upon you. There's always an opportunity to learn and better your English. That's the main thing about Australia. There's always opportunity to better yourself in everything. I think the sad thing is, it's just that people who speak better English look down on people who don't. That's just how it is, and it's a sad thing, because those people, if they're actually putting in the effort to learn and better their English and better themselves, then I don't think that's right to look down upon them. But that's just how society works.
Yeah, that's true, because, like, say, so quite recently, I think I was speaking with one of my brothers, and then he was talking about P Square, one of the P Square brothers, in a post that he wrote, and he said this guy has so many grammatical errors, and I told him, just focus on the content of what the guy is saying.
If you hold yourself to the high standards, then that's up to you to improve and achieve that standard. I don't think like anyone is necessarily gonna see you and be like, oh, you didn't spell that right, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that. I mean, there are some people who do that. Like, let's say like in school or on social media or something like that. But then again, it just comes back down to you, and if you're gonna take that personally. Like, take it in to a certain extent, but don't let it affect you in a way that if you heard about it, just go back and better yourself and you'll be fine. Their opinion shouldn't matter if you're working on yourself and you know you're constantly improving and evolving. People's opinion about if your grammar is good enough or not, or if you speak a certain way because you're from Africa and we're expected to speak broken English in a way, that's their opinion. It should not affect you at all, as long as you're bettering yourself.
My whole takeaway here is, let's not use accent as you not being educated, because somebody with a strong accent can and is capable of speaking proper sense and even more grammatically correct sentences somebody with an Australian or Caucasian accent. So we have to take accent outside the whole thing and let people realize that everybody, regardless of your culture, your country, your religion, once you're able to articulate something and it makes sense, then you're okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of agree with both of you guys. I think I said my piece where I think that it's really not necessary to focus on that. And I think that if you are equating an accent and the way you articulate yourself with intelligence, then you yourself need to do some further learning within yourself about what the two actually are. Because I think that we're doing a disservice to ourselves. Because if you think that the way that I articulate myself sounds better if it's with a white accent, then what does that say about Black people?
Yeah.
You know.
True. I agree with you guys. And I think, certain Black people, depending on their association with Western culture or engagement, professional engagement, should develop their abilities in English or grammatical skills. Say someone who works in media or a journalist, obviously should be fluent in or speaking. If it is in Australia, fluent in speaking English and have good diction. So that's very necessary, irrespective of being Black